Commander Theknor adjusted his optical sensors and reviewed the application on his datapad for the third time. The document glowed with humanity's official request to join the Galactic Council's peacekeeping forces. He made a dismissive clicking sound with his mandibles. "Another soft-world species, wanting to play soldier," he muttered. His assistant, a young Vrelnian named Kess, looked up from her station. "Sir, their homeworld readings are remarkable. Gravity at 1.2 standard, atmospheric oxygen at dangerous levels, and their star's radiation. I've seen paradise worlds before." Theknor interrupted. He had served 40 cycles in the Council's military. He had seen 12 different species go to war. He knew what real warriors looked like. Moderate climate, abundant water, no major predators. They evolved in a garden, and now they want to see what real conflict looks like. Kess remained silent. She was too junior to argue with a commander. The truth was, the Council needed bodies. The Korthax swarm had been pushing into Council space for 6 months. 3 colony worlds had gone dark. The traditional peacekeeping species, the honor-bound Vrelnians, the methodical Trent, the defensive Polix, were struggling against an enemy that didn't follow the established rules of warfare. So when humanity applied, offering 200 Marines and a frigate, the Council accepted. They would be assigned to rear guard duties, logistics, maybe some light patrol work. Nothing dangerous. Nothing important. The human ship arrived on schedule. The UNSC Indomitable was smaller than most Council vessels, built with sharp angles and dark gray plating. It looked aggressive, Theknor thought, like something trying too hard to appear threatening. Captain Jessica Reeves came aboard Sentinel-7 for the briefing. She was short by Vrelnian standards, barely reaching Theknor's mid-thorax. Her skin was dark, her hair was pulled back tight, and her eyes moved constantly, cataloging everything around her. "Commander Theknor," she said, extending her hand in the human greeting gesture. "Thank you for having us." Theknor awkwardly grasped her hand. It was warm and strong. "Captain Reeves, welcome to the frontier." The briefing room filled with representatives from 6 different species. Captain Reeves sat quietly, listening as Theknor explained the tactical situation. The Korthax were swarm fighters, using overwhelming numbers and bioengineered warriors bred for combat. They adapted quickly and showed no fear. "Your forces will maintain position here," Theknor indicated on the tactical display, "behind the main fleet. If we need to evacuate, wounded, or transport supplies, you'll assist." Captain Reeves nodded. "Understood, Commander. And if the line breaks?" "It won't," Theknor said with confidence. "We've fought the Korthax before. We know their patterns." Something flickered across the human's face. It might have been amusement. "Of course, sir." That evening, Theknor observed the human crew through the station's internal monitors. It was standard procedure when integrating new species: watch how they behave, learn their patterns, identify potential problems. What he saw confused him. The humans were laughing. Not nervous laughter, but genuine enjoyment. They gathered in their mess hall, sharing food they called barbecue, and talking about something called movie night. They played games. They exercised together. But it looked more like fighting than training. They punched and kicked each other, then helped each other up, smiling. "They don't seem worried," Kess observed, watching over his shoulder. "They don't understand what they're facing," Theknor replied. But something about their behavior bothered him in a way he couldn't articulate. The first engagement came 30 hours later. The Korthax hit the Council fleet in the Terek system, exactly where intelligence predicted. Standard swarm tactics: overwhelm sensors with chaff, deploy thousands of small attack craft, board, and disable larger vessels. The Council fleet responded with standard defensive protocols. Point defense systems activated, fighter squadrons launched, capital ships formed a protective sphere. Theknor commanded the fleet from the bridge of the flagship, the Vigilant Justice. Everything was proceeding according to doctrine. Then the Korthax did something new. Their attack craft split into two groups. The first wave attacked as expected, sacrificing themselves against the Council's defenses. But the second wave held back, observing, learning. When the Council fighters moved to pursuit formation, the second wave struck from underneath, where the defensive sphere was weakest. "Shields failing on decks 12 through 15, an officer shouted. "Boarding parties detected," another voice called out. The organized chaos of battle turned into genuine panic. The Korthax were inside the flagship. They moved fast, killing anyone they encountered, heading straight for critical systems. "All units, this is Vigilant Justice," Technor transmitted on all frequencies. "We are boarded and need immediate." "Vigilant Justice, this is Indomitable." Captain Reeves's voice cut through the channel, calm and steady. "We're 3 minutes out. Hold on." Technor pulled up the security feeds from the compromised decks. Korthax warriors, each one 2 meters tall, 4-armed, covered in biological armor, were tearing through his crew. Vrelnian security forces fired their weapons, fell back, tried to establish defensive positions. They were losing. 2 minutes, Captain Reeves updated. Technor watched the feeds with growing despair. His people were dying. The humans would arrive too late. Then something changed on the monitors. A new group appeared in the corridors. Humans. 20 Marines in combat armor, moving fast. They didn't form defensive positions. They didn't fall back. They charged. Technor watched, his mouth open in shock, as human Marines closed to melee range with Korthax warriors. The humans were smaller, weaker, slower. It should have been a massacre. But the humans fought with a ferocity that made no tactical sense. One Marine's weapon malfunctioned. Instead of retreating, he drew a knife, a primitive blade weapon, and attacked a Korthax warrior that had 50 kilograms and 4 arms advantage on him. Another Marine tackled a Korthax through a bulkhead door into zero gravity. The security feed showed them tumbling through space, the human still fighting, still striking, his face twisted in something that looked like joy. The audio feed picked up human voices. They were shouting, but not in fear. "Get some. On your left. Hoorah!" One Marine, his arm clearly broken, picked up a severed Korthax limb and used it as a club against another warrior. They were laughing. In 15 minutes, the humans cleared 3 decks. The Korthax boarding party was eliminated. Human casualties: 3 injured, none killed. Korthax casualties: all of them. When Captain Reeves came aboard to report, Technor met her in the corridor outside the battle zone. The walls were scorched with weapons fire. Green Korthax blood mixed with red human blood on the floor. "Captain," Technor began, but he didn't know what to say. Reeves looked tired but satisfied. "We've secured the compromised sections, Commander. My medics are assisting your wounded. We'll help with cleanup and repairs." "Your Marines," Technor said slowly. "They fought in close combat. Against Korthax warriors. That's not standard tactics." Reeves shrugged. "It's effective tactics, sir. Sometimes, you need to get personal." Behind her, human Marines were carrying equipment and joking with each other. One was humming a tune. They had just survived combat against one of the galaxy's most dangerous species. And they seemed fine. More than fine. They seemed energized. Technor felt something cold settle in his chest. A feeling he hadn't experienced in years of combat. Unease. "Thank you, Captain," he managed. "Your assistance was invaluable." That night, alone in his quarters, Technor pulled up Earth's file. He had only skimmed it before, seeing what he expected to see. A paradise world. A young species. Nothing remarkable. Now he read deeper. Human history. 10,000 years of recorded warfare. Over 8,000 distinct martial arts systems. Weapons development dating back 50,000 years. They had invented spears before they invented farming. They had been fighting each other since before they discovered fire. Theknor sat back, his mandibles clicking nervously. What kind of species were these humans? And what had the council just invited into its military? The aftermath of the boarding action left sections of the Vigilant Justice looking like a slaughterhouse. Repair crews worked around the clock. But Theknor insisted on touring the battle zones himself. A commander needed to see what his people faced. What he found disturbed him more than the battle itself. In Corridor D-17, human Marines had painted something on the wall. The symbols were drawn in Korthax, blood still wet and dripping. Theknor didn't recognize the writing, but it looked deliberate, intentional. "What does this say?" he asked a human corporal who was helping with cleanup. The corporal glanced at the wall and chuckled. "It's Latin, sir. Ancient Earth language. Means, who dares wins. Special Forces motto. You wrote this during combat?" "No, sir. After. Martinez did it while we were securing the sector. He's always had a flair for the dramatic." Theknor stared at the human. "You were still in danger. Why waste time on decoration?" The corporal's smile faded. He looked at Theknor with an expression that was hard to read. "It's not decoration, Commander. It's a message. For the next ones who try to board this ship, so they know what they're facing." In Corridor D-22, Theknor found Korthax bodies arranged in a specific pattern. They were laid out, facing a single direction, their weapons stacked in the center. "Did you do this?" he asked a human lieutenant. "Yes, sir. Respect for the fallen enemy. Old military tradition. But you also used their own limb as a weapon against them." The lieutenant didn't look apologetic. "Different contexts, Commander. In combat, you use everything available. After combat, you honor the warrior. They fought hard. They deserve respect." Theknor tried to process this dual thinking. Brutal efficiency in battle, ceremony afterward. It seemed contradictory. In Corridor D-28, a portable speaker still played human music, something with heavy drums and aggressive vocals. "We forgot to turn it off," a Marine explained, embarrassed. "We use music sometimes. Gets the blood pumping." "You brought entertainment devices into combat?" "Sir, when you're about to fight for your life, you want something familiar. Something that reminds you why you're fighting. For some guys, it's music. For others, it's pictures of family. For Martinez, it's his lucky coin. Whatever gets you through." 34. Rabber. Theknor authorized a formal interview with Captain Reeves. They met in a conference room aboard the Indomitable. The human ship's interior was functional and cramped compared to council vessels. Every surface seemed designed for efficiency rather than comfort. "Captain, I need to understand your combat methodology," Theknor said directly. "Your Marines engaged in close-quarters combat against an enemy with significant physical advantages. This contradicts all standard tactical doctrine." Reeves poured herself a cup of dark liquid she called coffee. "Commander, may I speak freely?" "Please. Your standard tactical doctrine is designed for species that view warfare as an unfortunate necessity. You fight to end conflicts quickly, with minimal casualties. You follow rules because violence makes you uncomfortable." Theknor bristled. "We follow rules because civilized beings have codes of conduct." "I'm not criticizing, sir. I'm explaining the difference." Reeves took a sip of her coffee. "Humans also follow rules. We have extensive military law, codes of conduct, treaties, but our approach to combat itself is different. We don't just fight to win, we fight to dominate. To send a message that makes the enemy think twice about fighting us again. That seems excessive. Maybe, but it works." Reeves pulled up a holographic display. Human military history, compressed. 10,000 years of continuous warfare. We've fought over territory, resources, religion, ideology, honor, revenge, and sometimes just because we were bored. We've developed extensive psychological frameworks specifically for understanding and exploiting combat dynamics. The display showed a bewildering array of military formations, weapons, tactics, and strategies from Earth's history. "We don't just train to fight," Reeves continued. "We study fighting the way your species might study art or philosophy. We have war colleges, military academies, entire universities dedicated to understanding conflict. There's something we call game theory, mathematical models for strategic decision-making in competitive situations." "You've mathematically optimized warfare?" "Among other things, yes." Theknor felt that cold unease again. "Captain, you're describing a species that has weaponized thought itself." Reeves smiled, but it wasn't a friendly expression. "Commander, we're describing a species that survived because we got really good at killing things, including each other. For 200,000 years, humans were both predator and prey. We hunted, and we were hunted. The ones who survived passed on their genes and their knowledge. We're descended from the most paranoid, most aggressive, most adaptable survivors our planet produced." A notification interrupted them. The Council's Intelligence Division was conducting an emergency briefing for all senior officers. The briefing room was packed. Representatives from 10 different species listened as the intelligence director, a crystalline being named Salix, presented Earth's comprehensive military profile. "We completed our deep analysis of human civilization," Salix announced, her voice resonating through multiple frequencies. "The findings are unprecedented." The holographic display showed Earth's timeline. Humans engaged in organized warfare approximately 50,000 years before developing agriculture. This reverses the normal pattern of civilization development for every other known sapient species. Murmurs of surprise rippled through the room. Human children play combat games recreationally. Human adults consume media depicting warfare for entertainment. Human languages contain over 300 distinct words specifically for different types of killing. The display shifted to show human military organizations. Current human military forces number approximately 30 million active personnel. They maintain this standing army during peacetime. For comparison, the entire Vrelnian peacekeeping force numbers 5 million, and we are considered a heavily militarized species. Theknor watched the other commanders. They looked increasingly uncomfortable. "Most concerning," Salix continued, "humans have developed over 8,000 distinct martial arts systems. These are not just combat techniques, but entire philosophical frameworks built around the practice of violence. Some are thousands of years old and still actively practiced." The display showed humans of various ages practicing different fighting styles. Children, elderly, everyone in between. Additionally, humans engage in recreational combat sports. They fight each other, intentionally, for entertainment and social bonding. This behavior begins in childhood and continues throughout their lifespan. A Polix commander raised a tentacle. "Surely this indicates a violent, unstable species. Should we be concerned about their psychological profiles?" "Oh, that's the paradox," Salix replied. "Human psychological evaluations show them to be remarkably stable, empathetic, and capable of complex social cooperation. They form deep emotional bonds. They create art, music, literature. They're not psychotic. They're simply evolved from a predator species that never stopped being predators." After the briefing, the Council made its decision. Human forces would be deployed on a larger scale. But given their unusual capabilities and concerning psychological profile, all human units would have Council liaisons assigned to monitor their activities. Theknor was assigned as primary liaison to human forces. He wasn't sure if this was an honor or a punishment. He spent the next week observing human training routines. What he saw made his previous concerns seem naive. Humans trained constantly. Every day included physical exercise that pushed their bodies to apparent limits. They ran until exhausted, lifted heavy objects repeatedly, practiced combat techniques for hours. "Why do you train so hard?" he asked a sergeant named Rodriguez. "To stay sharp, sir. A dull blade is useless in a fight. But you train even when no combat is scheduled." Rodriguez looked confused by the question. "Especially when no combat is scheduled. That's when you have time to improve. You don't want your first time trying a technique to be when your life depends on it." Theknor watched humans spar fighting each other with reduced intensity but full technique. They punched, kicked, grappled, threw each other to the ground. Then they helped each other up, discussed what worked and what didn't, and did it again. "You're hurting each other," Theknor observed. "Training has to hurt a little," Rodriguez explained. "Otherwise your body doesn't adapt. Pain is information, Commander. It teaches you what to avoid and what you can endure." That evening, Theknor discovered humans consumed military content for entertainment. Movies, books, games, all depicting warfare in various forms. "Why would you want to experience war in your leisure time?" he asked Lieutenant Chen, who was reading a book about ancient human naval warfare. Chen looked up. "It's not about wanting war, sir. It's about understanding it. These stories teach us about strategy, about human behavior under pressure, about sacrifice and courage. Plus, honestly, some of us just find it interesting. The way you might study engineering or biology, some humans study military history. It seems unhealthy. Maybe," Chen admitted. "But it's kept us alive. Every generation learns from the previous generation's wars. We don't forget. We study, we adapt, we improve." On his 7th day observing human forces, Theknor made a disturbing discovery. The humans had already analyzed every Council species combat doctrine. He found the files by accident, left open on a terminal in the Human Tactical Center. Detailed breakdowns of Vrelnian fighting styles, Pollux defensive formations, Trent command structures, weakness, assessments, counter, tactics, exploitation, strategies. "Lieutenant," Theknor barked at the nearest human officer. "What is this?" The lieutenant looked at the screen and shrugged. "Standard threat analysis, sir. We profile potential opponents. We are your allies." "Yes, sir, currently." The word "currently" hung in the air like a weapon. "You're planning how to fight us?" "Commander, we're planning how to fight everyone. It's what we do. Hope for peace, prepare for war. We're not planning to fight you. We're just prepared if we ever need to." Big difference. Theknor stared at the human. "Do all your people think this way?" "Most of us, sir. It's survival instinct. We learned a long time ago that the worst time to start planning a defense is when you're already under attack." That night, Theknor updated his personal log. "I have been observing human forces for 7 days. My initial assessment was incorrect. Humans are not soft-worlders playing at warfare. They are something far more concerning. They have built their entire civilization with warfare as a central pillar, not glorifying it, but accepting it as inevitable and preparing accordingly. They train their children to fight. They study violence academically. They practice combat recreationally. And most disturbing, they do all of this while maintaining stable, functional, even compassionate social structures. They are not monsters. They are predators who have learned to cooperate. And that makes them more dangerous than any enemy I have ever faced." He paused, then added one more line. "I fear I have underestimated them. I fear we all have." The Korthax swarm launched their major offensive 3 weeks after the boarding incident. Intelligence had been tracking Korthax fleet movements for months, watching them mass forces in the outer systems. The attack, when it came, was overwhelming. 17 Council worlds came under assault simultaneously. The Korthax had been studying Council tactics, learning patterns, identifying weaknesses. Now they exploited everything they had learned. The planet Viridian 9 became the critical battleground. It was a jungle world, humid and dense with vegetation. strategically positioned to control 3 major trade routes. If the Korthax took Viridian 9, they would split the Council's territory in half. The Council sent its best forces: Vrelnian honor guards, Polix defensive specialists, Trent tactical units. They established a perimeter around the main colony city and prepared for a conventional ground war. The Korthax didn't fight conventionally. They deployed bioweapons that turned the jungle itself hostile. Plants became toxic. Water sources became contaminated. The air filled with spores that caused respiratory failure in most Council species. They used psychological warfare, broadcasting sounds on frequencies that caused pain and disorientation in Vrelnian and Polix sensory organs. They employed overwhelming numbers, treating their own warriors as expendable resources, throwing thousands of soldiers against defensive positions in human wave attacks. Council forces began losing ground. Slowly, at first, then rapidly. Theknor watched the casualty reports with growing despair. The Korthax had learned too well. Every tactic the Council employed, the Korthax had a counter. Every defensive position, they found a way through. "We need a different approach," Admiral Vexrin announced in the command briefing. She was the overall theater commander, a veteran with crystalline skin and multifaceted eyes. "The Korthax are predicting our moves. We need something they can't predict." She turned to Theknor. "Commander, your human forces, how would they handle this situation?" Theknor thought about what he had learned over the past weeks. "They adapt quickly. Then give them operational command of the Viridian 9 ground theater. Let's see what these humans can really do." Captain Reeves accepted the assignment without hesitation. Within 6 hours, the UNSC Indomitable was in orbit over Viridian 9, and human forces were deploying to the surface. Theknor accompanied them as liaison and observer. The jungle was nightmare terrain. Visibility was less than 50 meters. The air was thick and hot. Strange sounds echoed through the vegetation. Council forces had established fortified positions and ventured out only in large, well-armed groups. The humans dispersed immediately. "Captain, your forces are splitting up," Theknor observed with alarm. "That's tactically unsound in hostile territory." "It's guerrilla warfare, Commander," Reeves replied. She was reviewing a tactical map on a portable device. "We're not holding positions. We're hunting." "Hunting?" "The Korthax have numbers and biological advantages. But this is jungle terrain. Humans evolved in environments like this. We know how to use it." Theknor watched as human squads, just 5 or 6 Marines each, moved into the dense vegetation and vanished. He pulled up their tracking signals on his monitor. They were spreading out in a seemingly random pattern. "There's no organization to their deployment," he protested. "There's plenty of organization," Reeves countered. "It's just not the kind you're used to. Each squad is autonomous. They have objectives, but they're free to adapt their approach. We call it mission-type tactics. Give them the goal. Let them figure out how to achieve it." The first Korthax patrol disappeared 6 hours later. Theknor reviewed the sensor data. A Korthax squad, 20 warriors strong, had been moving through a section of jungle. Their signals had stopped abruptly. When Council reconnaissance reached the location, they found all 20 warriors dead. "How?" Theknor demanded. "What killed them?" A human sergeant named Washington provided the report. "Ambush, sir. We let them walk into a kill zone, then hit them from 3 sides simultaneously. Combat was over in 90 seconds. 20 Korthax warriors in 90 seconds? Would have been faster, but the terrain slowed us down. Over the next week, Korthax patrols began disappearing across the entire region. The swarm had deployed over 10,000 warriors to Viridian 9. Hundreds of them were vanishing without explanation. Deep in the Korthax command structure, Swarm Leader Prime 17 reviewed the situation with growing concern. Prime 17 was a command caste Korthax, larger and more intelligent than warrior caste members. It had been studying Council forces for 2 cycles, learning their patterns, exploiting their predictability. But something had changed. Council forces were no longer where they should be. Patrols were disappearing. Warriors were reporting something in the jungle, but they couldn't describe what. Prime 17 accessed the intelligence reports on humans. Small species, moderate physical capabilities, young civilization, nothing concerning. But the losses continued. Prime 17 ordered enhanced reconnaissance. Korthak's scouts moved through the jungle, with biological sensors active, detecting heat signatures, movement, chemical traces. They found nothing. Then they died anyway. One scout managed to transmit video before its death. The footage was chaotic, showing dense jungle vegetation. Then something moved fast and low. A burst of weapon fire. The scout turned, bringing its weapon up. A human appeared, face painted with mud and vegetation, moving with impossible quiet through terrain that should have been noisy. The human's weapon fired. The scout fell. The last frame showed the human's eyes. They were calm, focused, the eyes of a predator. Prime 17 increased patrols, sent larger groups, established defensive perimeters. Nothing worked. The humans seemed to flow through the jungle like water, appearing where they shouldn't be, striking from impossible angles. Then the sound started. It began as distant noise, carried on the wind. Korthak's warriors heard their own death screams, recorded and broadcast back at them. Mixed with the screams were other sounds. Human laughter, predator growls that no human throat should have been able to produce. Music, pounding, aggressive, alien, psychological warfare. Captain Reeves explained to Theknor. We're getting inside their heads, making them afraid of the jungle itself. 1. Is this ethical? Is bioweapon deployment ethical, Commander? The Korthaks use fear as a weapon. We're just better at it. The operation expanded. Human forces began what they called Operation Scarecrow. They left markers in the jungle. Korthak's weapons arranged in specific patterns. Territorial symbols painted on trees. Audio devices that activated when Korthaks approached, playing recorded sounds designed to unnerve. They didn't kill every patrol they encountered. Sometimes they let Korthak's warriors see them, just for a moment, then vanish. Let the warriors report back that humans could be anywhere, could strike from nowhere. The psychological impact was devastating. Prime 17 received reports of warrior caste members refusing to patrol certain areas. Some claimed to hear humans even when sensors showed nothing. Others displayed physical symptoms of stress, a condition warrior caste Korthaks weren't supposed to experience. Then entire squads started dying without wounds. The first incident involved 12 warriors found dead in a jungle clearing. No weapon marks. No signs of struggle. Medical analysis indicated cardiac failure caused by extreme stress response. They had died of fear. Prime 17 accessed the audio logs recovered from the dead warriors' equipment. The recording was brief but horrifying. Human voices in the darkness, speaking in calm tones. The sounds of movement all around. Then human laughter, growing louder. The warriors had panicked. In their panic, their biological systems had overloaded. They had literally been frightened to death. Theknor listened to the same recording in the human command post. This is what you've been doing? It's effective, Reeves said without apology. We learned a long time ago that breaking an enemy's will is more effective than breaking their army. Fear is a weapon, Commander, and humans have been using it for thousands of years. But causing death through psychological torture, we didn't torture anyone. We let them torture themselves. Fear is in the mind, sir. We just provided the stimulus. Theknor watched the tactical display. Korthak's forces were consolidating, pulling back from the jungle, abandoning their forward positions. They were responding exactly as humans predicted. You're hurting them, he realized. Moving them Where you want them. Into terrain we've prepared, Reeves confirmed. They're so focused on what's behind them, they're not watching where they're going. This is how humans fight wars? This is how humans win wars, Commander. We learned something important over 10,000 years of killing each other. The enemy you break psychologically stays broken. The enemy you just defeat comes back stronger. Swarm Leader Prime 17 made a decision. The humans were too dangerous to fight piecemeal. The swarm would commit its reserves 50,000 fresh warriors, bioengineered for maximum lethality, bred without fear response. They would crush the human position through overwhelming force. Numbers would prevail where tactics had failed. Prime 17 issued the order. Every available Korthax warrior on Viridian 9 would converge on the human command sector. They would attack simultaneously from all directions. The humans would be buried under sheer mass of warriors. It was supposed to be a slaughter. Theknor received intelligence about the Korthax mobilization with alarm. Captain, they're committing everything. Over 50,000 warriors, heading directly for our position. Reeves studied the tactical map calmly. Good. That's exactly what we wanted. We're outnumbered 20-1. Numbers aren't everything, Commander. She activated her communication system. All units. This is Reeves. The enemy is massing for a final push. Weapons, free. Protocol Berserker is authorized. Show them what humans do when the leash comes off. Theknor didn't understand the term Protocol Berserker. He was about to learn. The Korthax came at dawn. 50,000 warriors moving through the jungle in a massive coordinated assault. They advanced on a front 3 kilometers wide, sweeping everything before them. The ground trembled with their movement. Theknor stood in the human command post, watching sensor displays light up with enemy contacts. The sheer number of approaching hostiles made his breathing quicken. Captain, we need to fall back, he urged. This position is indefensible. We're not defending, Commander. Reeves replied. Her voice was steady, almost relaxed. We're attacking. Attacking? Into that? Reeves smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. Marines, she called out to her troops. Remember your training. Remember what we are. Today, we remind the galaxy why humans became the apex predator on a death world. She activated the general comm channel. All units, weapons free. Protocol Berserker. Make them remember this day. The human Marines responded with a roar that made Theknor's sensory organs flatten against his skull. It wasn't a war cry. It was something primal. Something that carried echoes of ancient hunts and older fears. Then the humans charged. Not a tactical advance, not a fighting withdrawal. A full-speed charge directly into overwhelming enemy numbers. Theknor watched on the monitors in disbelief. Human Marines sprinted toward the Korthax line, weapons firing, voices raised in wordless battle cries. They weren't seeking cover. They weren't using suppression tactics. They were closing distance as fast as possible. This is suicide, Theknor whispered. No, Commander. A human staff sergeant said from a nearby console. This is warfare. Human style. Number 4. The two forces collided like weather systems. The impact was visible on thermal sensors, a massive spike in heat signatures as thousands of combatants engaged simultaneously. But something was wrong with the battle flow. The Korthax advance was slowing, stopping. Individual units were breaking formation. Theknor pulled up video feeds from human helmet cameras. What he saw defied comprehension. A human Marine Corporal Martinez, according to his tag, ran directly at a Korthax warrior twice his size. The warrior raised all 4 arms, weapons ready. Martinez didn't slow down. At the last moment he dropped, sliding under the warrior's weapons, and drove a blade up through the underside of its jaw. The Korthax fell. Martinez was already moving toward the next target. Another feed showed Sergeant Washington. His rifle was empty. Instead of reloading, he threw it at a Korthax's face, then drew 2 combat knives and launched himself at 3 warriors simultaneously. The fight was brutal and close. Washington took injuries. Theknor could see blood, human blood, but the Marine kept fighting, kept attacking. His face showed something between fury and joy. A third feed captured Gunny, the sergeant Theknor had observed during training. Gunny's squad was surrounded by Korthax warriors. Standard tactics called for defensive formation, fighting withdrawal. Gunny's squad charged into the surrounding enemy instead, breaking the encirclement through sheer aggressive momentum. The audio feed picked up human voices. Push forward. They bleed. They die. For Earth. Hoorah. They were laughing. In the middle of combat that should have killed them, outnumbered 20-1, humans were laughing. Swarm Leader Prime 1-7 watched the battle from its command position with incomprehension. The humans should have been overrun in minutes. Instead, Korthax warriors were falling back, breaking, fleeing. Impossible. Warrior caste Korthax were bred without fear. Genetic engineering had removed that weakness. They could not run from battle, but they were running. From humans. Prime 1-7 accessed battle feed from warrior perspective. What it saw made no biological sense. Humans were smaller than Korthax, weaker, slower. But they fought with an intensity that violated every tactical model. They didn't seek to survive. They sought to kill. They took wounds that should have incapacitated them and kept fighting. They faced certain death with what appeared to be eagerness. One video showed a human whose weapon had malfunctioned. The human dropped it, drew a blade, and charged 3 Korthax warriors alone, screaming. That scream wasn't fear. It was challenge. It was hunting instinct. The human killed 2 warriors before the third struck a fatal blow. As the human fell, dying, it pulled an explosive device from its armor and triggered it. All 3 warriors died in the blast. The human had sacrificed itself just to take enemies with it. Prime 1-7 tried to process this behavior. Sacrifice for tactical gain was acceptable. But this wasn't tactical. This was something else. Something that existed beyond calculation. Humans weren't just willing to die in combat. They seemed to embrace it. Across the battlefield, the pattern repeated. Human units, vastly outnumbered, fought with such ferocity that Korthax warriors hesitated. And hesitation in combat was death. The humans exploited every moment of hesitation ruthlessly. Theknor left the command post. He needed to see this himself. He needed to understand. He took a transport to the front line, where human medics were treating wounded. What he found shocked him more than the battle itself. Injured Marines sat in the medical station, some with severe wounds, and they were smiling, joking with each other. One with a broken arm was arm wrestling another Marine with his good arm. They paused their competition to receive medical treatment, then resumed. "You're wounded," Theknor said to a Marine with a bandaged leg. "Severely." "Why aren't you in shock?" The Marine her name tape read. Johnson grinned. This is nothing, sir. I've done worse in training accidents. Besides, we won. Didn't we? You're not afraid of the pain?" Johnson's grin faded. She looked at Theknor with something like pity. "Sir, humans have been dealing with pain for 200,000 years. We evolved on a planet that tried to kill us every day. Pain is just information. It tells you you're still alive." A commotion outside drew Theknor's attention. Marines were cheering. He stepped out to see what caused the celebration. They were carrying a body. Gunny. Even from a distance, Theknor could see he was dead. But the Marines weren't mourning. They were celebrating. "Why?" Theknor demanded of the nearest human. "Your comrade is dead. Why do you cheer?" Lieutenant Chen answered. "Because Gunny died the way he wanted, sir. In combat. Fighting. Taking enemies with him. In human warrior tradition, that's the good death. That's dying with honor. You celebrate death? We celebrate the life, Commander. Gunny was a warrior. He lived as a warrior and died as a warrior. His family will be proud. His brothers will remember him. His death meant something. Theknor watched as they carried Gunny's body past. The fallen Marine's face was peaceful, almost smiling. "This is madness," Theknor whispered. "No, sir," Chen said quietly. "This is humanity. We know we're going to die eventually. Everyone dies. The question is how. The question is what we achieve before we go." Gunny chose to go out fighting. Most humans would consider that a good choice. The battle continued for 6 more hours. 6 hours of brutal, close-quarters combat. 6 hours of humans fighting with ferocity that broke Korthak's morale and shattered their formations. When it ended, the Korthaks were retreating. 50,000 warriors had been reduced to less than 20,000. Human casualties: 800 wounded, 147 dead. The mathematics didn't make sense. By every tactical model, the humans should have been annihilated. Instead, they had won decisively. Theknor found Captain Reeves in the aftermath. She was dirty, tired, and had a bandage on her arm, but she looked satisfied. "How?" Theknor asked, simply. "We broke them psychologically," Reeves explained. The Korthaks thought numbers would win. They forgot about will. They forgot that sometimes the species willing to trade casualties wins. We knew we'd lose people. We accepted that cost. They didn't expect us to. Quote, "You sacrificed your own people. We honored our own people," Reeves corrected. Every Marine who died today died fighting, died for something they believed in. That's not sacrifice. That's choice. Theknor thought of Gunny, smiling as he fell. "Your species is insane." "Maybe," Reeves admitted. "But we're effective. That's what matters." That night, Theknor reviewed helmet camera footage from the battle. He watched humans fight and die with courage that bordered on madness. He watched them laugh in the face of death. He watched them choose to close distance with superior enemy forces. He stopped on one video. A Marine named Torres, wounded and surrounded. 4 Korthaks warriors closing in. Torres's weapon was empty. He dropped it, pulled out a combat knife, and smiled at the approaching enemies. Theknor heard Torres speak clearly. "Come on then. Let's dance." The Korthaks warriors hesitated. Just for a moment. Just long enough. Torres attacked. He was going to die, the outcome was certain. But he attacked anyway. With full commitment. With absolute conviction. He killed 2 warriors before the other 2 brought him down. Theknor paused the video on Torres's face in that final moment. The human was smiling. Theknor felt something he hadn't experienced in 40 cycles of military service. Not fear of the enemy. Not fear of death. Fear of his own allies. Fear of what humanity represented. They were apex predators who had turned predation into an art form. They had spent 10,000 years perfecting the craft of killing, and they had brought those skills to the stars. And now, they were on the Council's side. Theknor updated his personal log with shaking appendages. "I have seen humanity in battle. I have witnessed Protocol Berserker. I now understand what these humans truly are. They are not soldiers in the way we understand the term. They are warriors from a species that romanticizes death in combat. They do not just accept casualties. They honor casualties. They do not fear the enemy. They make the enemy fear them. Today I learned something terrible. Humanity is the galaxy's apex predator. Not because they are strongest or fastest or smartest. Because they are willing to pay any price to win. Because they have turned warfare into culture and culture into weapon. I am grateful they are allies. I am terrified of what would happen if they became enemies. The Korthax have learned this lesson. I fear others will need to learn it as well. He paused, then added one final line. Today, for the first time in my career, I experienced real terror, not of dying in battle, but of the humans beside me who seemed so eager to embrace that death. What kind of species looks at mortality and smiles? 6 months after the Battle of Viridian 9, the Korthax swarm did something unprecedented in their entire species' history. They surrendered. The surrender transmission was brief, sent on all frequencies to every council vessel. We cannot fight demons. We yield. The word demons spread through council space like fire. The Korthax, a species that had fought for territory and resources for 3,000 years, that had never retreated from any conflict, had broken. Not militarily. Psychologically. The Galactic Council convened in emergency session. Theknor stood before the assembled representatives in the council chamber, a massive spherical room where delegates from 47 different species gathered. He was there to present his comprehensive report on human military capabilities. Distinguished delegates, Theknor began. I have spent 6 months embedded with human forces. What I learned requires council review and policy adjustment. He activated the holographic display. Earth rotated slowly in the center of the chamber. Humanity is not a typical emerging species. They are, by every measurable standard, a species evolved for warfare. The display shifted to show human anatomy. Physical characteristics. Bipedal endurance predators. Humans can run for hours without rest, tracking prey over vast distances. Their cooling system allows sustained activity in conditions that would kill most species. Their hand structure provides precise tool manipulation and weapon usage. Their forward-facing eyes give stereoscopic vision for tracking movement and judging distance. Many species have these traits, a Polix delegate interrupted. What makes humans special? The psychological profile, Theknor replied. The display changed to show human brain structure. Humans possess unusual neural architecture. Under stress, they release chemicals that suppress pain, increase strength, and sharpen focus. This adrenaline response turns them into more effective combatants during crisis. Where most species become less capable under stress, humans become more capable. He pulled up historical data. Human cultural evolution is unprecedented. For 10,000 years of recorded history, they have engaged in continuous warfare. Not occasional. Conflict. Continuous. They have developed over 8,000 distinct martial arts systems. They have created entire academic disciplines devoted to studying warfare. They teach military history in schools. They practice combat recreationally. They consume military media for entertainment. The chamber filled with uneasy murmurs. Social bonding patterns are equally concerning, Theknor continued. Where most species bond through cooperation, humans also bond through shared trauma. Combat makes human units stronger, more cohesive. They form what they call brotherhood in arms that can override even familial bonds. A Vrelnian elder spoke up. You're describing a violent, unstable species. Why should we trust them? Because they're not unstable, Theknor replied. That's the paradox. Humans possess deep empathy, complex ethics, and sophisticated social structures. They create beautiful art and music. They form loving families. They're capable of great compassion. But they're also capable of channeling that compassion into protective aggression. They don't fight because they hate the enemy. They fight because they love what they're protecting. He displayed footage from Viridian 9. Delegates watched in silence as human Marines charged into overwhelming enemy numbers. This is Protocol Berserker, Theknor explained. When humans authorize this protocol, they remove psychological restraints on combat behavior. They don't become mindless. They become fully committed. They accept that casualties are inevitable and fight anyway. This breaks enemies who view self-preservation as primary. The display showed Korthak's warriors fleeing from smaller human forces. The Korthak swarm called humans demons for good reason. Humans employ psychological warfare at levels we never imagined. They don't just defeat enemies militarily. They break enemy morale, destroy enemy confidence, and create lasting trauma that prevents future conflicts. Admiral Vexrin stood. Commander Theknor. No, Admiral. I'm recommending we accept reality. Humanity is the most effective warrior species the galaxy has ever seen. Not because they're strongest, but because they've optimized warfare across 10,000 years of practice. They've turned combat into science, art, and religion simultaneously. He displayed the final slide. Human casualty figures from Viridian 9, compared to projected Council casualties, if humans hadn't been involved. Without human intervention, we estimate Council forces would have suffered 85% casualties taking Viridian 9. With humans, actual casualties were 12%. They didn't just win the battle. They saved thousands of Council lives doing it. That's 9. The chamber fell silent. The question before this Council is not whether humans are dangerous. They are. The question is whether they're dangerous to us or for us. Based on my observations, I believe humans are the greatest defensive asset the Council has ever acquired. But they must be deployed carefully, and their capabilities must be fully understood. Debate raged for hours. Some delegates wanted restrictions on human forces. Others wanted them expanded. Finally, a compromise emerged. Humans would form what they called the First Response Division. They would be called only for existential threats, situations where conventional Council forces were insufficient. They would have operational independence, but remain under Council oversight. Captain Reeves accepted the proposal when it was presented to her. We're not here to threaten anyone, Admiral. We're here to help. If you need us for the hard fights, we'll take them. That's what we do. The position of permanent liaison to human forces was offered to Theknor. After 6 months of observation, he understood humans better than any other Council member. He accepted, though, with mixed feelings. Why do you seem troubled? Reeves asked him after the announcement. Because I understand what you are, Theknor replied. And that understanding brings both relief and fear. We don't want you to fear us, Commander. I know. That's why I fear you. Because you're capable of terrible things, but you choose not to do them. You have the capacity for unlimited violence, but you restrain it. That level of self-control is almost more frightening than the violence itself. Reeves smiled. Welcome to the human condition, Commander. We've been dealing with that paradox for our entire history. As part of his new assignment, Theknor visited Earth. He needed to see humanity's homeworld, to understand the context that created this warrior species. Earth was beautiful. Blue oceans, green continents, white clouds. From orbit, it looked peaceful. On the surface, Theknor saw the complexity. Human cities blended technology and nature, parks filled with families, schools full of children, art galleries, theaters, research centers. But he also saw military bases, war memorials, museums dedicated to military history, veterans wearing their service decorations with pride. In Washington, D.C., he visited the various war memorials, long walls covered in names of the dead, statues of soldiers in combat, gardens of remembrance. Human families walked through these places, bringing flowers, touching names, teaching children about ancestors who died in service. We remember, a human guide explained. Every war, every soldier, every sacrifice. We don't glorify war, but we honor those who fought. You celebrate death, Theknor observed. We celebrate the life that was given, the guide corrected. There's a difference. These people chose to serve. Many chose to sacrifice. We remember them, so their choice meant something. Thecnor stood before the Marine Corps War Memorial, depicting human soldiers raising a flag on Iwo Jima during their Second World War. This battle killed almost 7,000 American Marines, the guide said. 27 Medals of Honor were awarded. The entire campaign lasted 5 weeks. It was one of the bloodiest battles in human history. Ludi. Why display it so prominently? Because it represents human courage. These Marines knew the odds. They fought anyway. They died protecting their brothers and their nation. That deserves to be remembered. A child, perhaps 8 years old, approached the memorial with her parents. She saluted the statue. Her father explained what it meant, why it was important. "You teach children about war?" Thecnor asked. "We teach them about sacrifice," the guide replied. "About courage. About service. We don't teach them to want war. We teach them to value peace. Enough to defend it." Thecnor visited military museums, saw weapons spanning 10,000 years of development, saw paintings depicting battles across human history, saw children learning about military strategy in school programs. But he also saw hospitals, schools, libraries. Saw humans engaged in art, science, commerce, entertainment. Saw a species that had created rich, complex civilization while maintaining warrior traditions. In Arlington National Cemetery, he watched a military funeral. A Marine, killed in action somewhere in council space, being laid to rest with full honors. The ceremony was beautiful and sad. The family wept, but they also stood proud. He died doing what he loved. The Marine's sister told Thecnor. He was a warrior. He knew the risks. He accepted them. We're sad he's gone, but we're proud of how he lived. That evening, Thecnor met with a human historian named Dr. Sarah Chen at Georgetown University. "Help me understand," Thecnor said. "Why does your species embrace warfare so thoroughly, while also claiming to want peace?" Dr. Chen smiled. "That's the central tension of human existence, Commander. We're a species that evolved through violence, but dreams of peace. We've spent 10,000 years trying to resolve that contradiction." She pulled up historical data. "Look at our development. We invented weapons before agriculture. We built armies before cities. War was our default state for most of human history. But gradually, slowly, we learned cooperation. We built societies. We created law. We developed ethics and morality. But you still train for war, because we learned another lesson. Peace requires strength. The species that forgets how to fight becomes victim to species that remember. We prepare for war so that we can maintain peace. It's paradoxical, but it works. What happens if you stop preparing? If you choose true pacifism? We tried that, Dr. Chen said quietly. We learned the hard way that peace isn't passive. Peace is active. Peace is defended. And defense requires warriors. So you maintain warrior culture permanently? We do. But we also maintain scholarly culture, artistic culture, scientific culture. We're not just warriors, Commander. We're warriors who learn to be civilized. Or civilized beings who never forgot how to be warriors, depending on how you look at it. Thecnor spent weeks on Earth studying human civilization. He attended a graduation ceremony at a military academy, watched young humans taking oaths of service. He visited factories that produced both weapons and medical equipment. He toured schools that taught both military history and conflict resolution. Everywhere he found the same pattern: humans preparing for war while hoping for peace. On his final day, he returned to the Marine Corps Memorial at sunset. The statue glowed in the fading light. A veteran in a wheelchair sat nearby, looking at the memorial in silence. Thecnor approached carefully. "Excuse me, may I ask you a question?" The veteran looked up. He was old, with gray hair and scars visible on his arms. "Sure, Commander. What do you want to know? Why do you come here?" The veteran looked back at the memorial. "To remember. I fought in 3 campaigns. Lost a lot of brothers. This memorial, it reminds me why we served, what we fought for. It reminds me their deaths meant something. Do you regret your service? The violence you experienced?" The veteran was quiet for a long moment. "Regret? No. I wouldn't change it. But I carry it. Every Marine killed on my watch, I carry them. Every decision I made, I carry it. That's the price of service. You carry it forever. Humans glorify this burden? We don't glorify it. We honor it. There's a difference, Commander. We honor the men and women who chose to carry that burden so others wouldn't have to. That's worth remembering." As the sun set completely, the memorial's lights activated. The statue seemed to glow from within. "Beautiful, isn't it?" the veteran said. "That's what we fight for. So things can be beautiful. So children can play without fear. So art and music can exist. War is ugly. But what we protect is beautiful. That's why we do it." Thek-Nor returned to Council space with new understanding. He prepared his final report, summarizing everything he'd learned. Humanity is not a threat to the Council. They are the Council's greatest defensive asset. But they must be understood properly. They are not monsters. They are not warmongers. They are a species that has mastered violence in order to protect peace. They have turned warfare into science and art, not because they love killing, but because they learned that expertise in violence is the best deterrent against violence. He paused, considering his final words carefully. "I have seen humanity in battle, and I felt real terror. Not terror of human violence, but terror of human capability. They can destroy with efficiency that borders on art, but they choose restraint. They have the power to dominate the galaxy through force, but they choose cooperation. That choice, that self-control, is what makes them truly dangerous. Because it means they can be anything they choose to be. Warrior or peacekeeper, destroyer or protector. And they choose protection. The galaxy is safer with humans as allies. The galaxy would be doomed with humans as enemies. I am grateful, every day, that they chose to be friends." 6 months later, Thek-Nor attended a memorial service on Viridian 9. A monument had been erected to the fallen Marines, human and Council forces who died defending the world. Gunny's name was carved in stone along with 146 others. Human Marines stood at attention in their dress uniforms. Families had traveled from Earth to attend. Speeches were given in multiple languages. When the ceremony ended, Gunny's daughter, the 10-year-old girl Thek-Nor had seen before, approached the monument. She placed a small American flag at the base, then saluted, just as she had been taught. Thek-Nor watched her. She had tears in her eyes but stood tall, proud of her father. Sad he was gone, but understanding why. She was being raised in warrior tradition, learning that some things are worth fighting for, worth dying for. And in that moment, Thek-Nor finally understood. Humans weren't violent because they enjoyed it. They were effective at violence because they loved deeply. They fought with such ferocity because they had something worth protecting. Family, friends, ideals, beauty, peace. They mastered war to preserve peace. They became demons to protect angels. That night, Thek-Nor made his final journal entry about humanity. Today I understood, humans are not warriors because they love death. They are warriors because they love life. They fight with such intensity because they value what they're defending that intensely. Every human in combat carries something they love into battle, and they fight to return to it, or to ensure it survives, even if they don't. This is what makes them truly terrifying. Not their weapons, not their tactics, their conviction, their willingness to pay any price for what they believe in. The galaxy has never seen a species like this. A species that can be both gentle and ferocious, compassionate and ruthless, peaceful and warlike, depending on what the moment requires. I am honored to serve alongside them. I am grateful they chose cooperation over conquest. And I hope, with all my being, that the galaxy never gives them reason to become enemies. Because I have seen humanity in battle. I have felt real terror at what they're capable of becoming. And I know now that the scariest thing about humans isn't what they are. It's what they could be if they ever stopped restraining themselves. The galaxy is safe because humans have chosen to be protectors. Pray they never choose otherwise. Theknor closed his journal and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, human ships patrolled Council space. Human marines trained for the next battle. Human families mourned their fallen and raised their children to serve. It was both comforting and terrifying. But mostly, it was hopeful. Because a species that had mastered violence so completely had also chosen peace. And that choice, every day, was what made humanity extraordinary.